call the Government and Education Committee meeting to order. Privilege of committee chair, members, discuss any items anybody want to discuss. I may be out of line here a little bit, but I've been a supporter of the vets. I think most of us here would support our Army veterans, war veterans. And I've been handed this copy of a military fun day is going to take place at Alpenhaus on October 26th from 10 to 5. It's being sponsored by the Fulton Montgomery County Vet Corps. I'd like everybody to make themselves aware of that. I think it might be a good event for as many of us as possible to attend. I think we should support our vets all we can. So with that said, we'll move on to the next item. And thank you, Barbara, for bringing that.
Thank you. If I can just add one more thing, it's not only Montgomery County, but it's Fulton County as well. So it's going to be a good event that's supporting all the vets from both Montgomery and Fulton County.
Right.
So thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Now we're going to discussion on the charter. If you remember, we left off the charter discussion according to my minutes here from July 30. The last thing we decided was Chairman Cottington requested the county attorney and the NISAC officials review the municipal home rule law and come up with an answer whether the charter could be amended or so on and so forth. And you'd like that information by the next education and committee meeting. So anyway, Doug, I believe, has had some discussions with people involved into it, and I'm going to kind of turn it over to him, let him kind of explain where we're at.
That's fine, thank you. I did, in furtherance of what came out of the meeting when NISAC folks, Steve Aquario and Patrick Cummings, were here at the end of July, last day of July, I believe. We really have, we've gotten together, we've spent a bit of time on this and really ground through some sections of law and compared them with the language in the charter itself to reach a point at which we can offer some guidance. I want to be clear at the outset here that there is not anything exactly on point to the question that we, or the questions really, that we have before us as far as what can be done and when and by whom in terms of amending the charter. On July 30th, when Steve Aquario and Patrick Cummings were here, you'll recall that they, and I don't know who was here and who wasn't offhand, but they went through and suggested numerous changes, clarifications, outright changes, typographical errors, some of them of a bit of substance and some of them of not much substance, that should be made to the document that was adopted by referendum last November. And I think that all of you have a copy of that in one form or another, either electronically or paper, or both.
You call it the red line charter.
Right. The question is, assuming that there is a desire to make some of these changes, how do we go about doing it? Who has the authority to do it, and what kind of time frame could they be done under? In getting together with an attorney for the Department of State, as well as Steve and Patrick, we've really come to the conclusion that there appears to be no outright barrier to this Board of Supervisors in 2013 making certain types of changes limited to the document by resolution. I will stress that in saying that there is not any black letter law that I can point to that says the Board of Supervisors can make changes to the charter before the charter is officially in effect, which we're all reminded is as of January 1st, 2014. It's not in effect yet, and that's one of the questions. We find nothing that is an outright barrier to this legislative body attempting to take on that task. However, that said, and I won't go through all of the various sections of law. In fact, the NISAC folks made me a nice book as a guide for this. A lot of it is, most of it is really just copies of already existing documents in one consolidated area, but it's useful, and I have pored over this, and I did appreciate it. The comment made as far as making the changes, there are several of the changes, that, at least the proposed changes that the NISAC folks recommended, that have to do with either clarifying increasing or the level of authority of one particular element of the new government, and it would be it could be the executive, it could be the legislature, it could be the county treasurer, perhaps others. We do have to draw the line at the idea of any such changes that would diminish powers as far as any powers with regard to budget, with regard to appointments, with regard to the authorization of contracts and that sort of thing. We did come to the conclusion that that type of thing has to be done by referendum, local law and referendum, at a special election or at a general election. Those issues are rise to a higher level of importance, and you would not be able to take any actions that diminish or in any way negatively affect the powers that are set forth in the document as it exists with respect to elected officials without going through that process. Now, you'll recall, if you were here at that meeting of July 30th, that we talked about the possibility of doing something with regard to a referendum this year. That wasn't feasible then, and it's certainly not feasible now. The time limits are long past for you to do anything with regard to this as far as putting it on the ballot in 2013, and they were already gone when we had this conversation July 30th. So you're faced with a situation whereby, at least arguably, this board could endeavor to make some changes to the document. There are some miscellaneous provisions that they recommended clarifying. That type of thing could be done. Certainly, where they pointed out that there were some typographical errors and some stray language that was accidentally left in the document, yes, you could deal with those. You could do those and make such changes now. But with respect to some of the other issues, which are at least arguably more significant issues that, at least from the perspective of the NISAC folks, and I have to agree with them, are flaws, if you will, with the document itself. That process would need to be gone through, which would mean that it's not feasible for it to be done by this Board of Supervisors, but by the county legislature after the first of the year. This board could, as has been suggested, attempt to write some things up to give to the legislature to look at as it begins its period of service in January. The legislature wouldn't be bound by anything like that, but it could be done. That would be kind of an informal first step, if you want to call it that. But
couldn't we just hand them that as it is, red line, and say, here, this is the recommendations that came from NISAC, not from this board, from NISAC. We have no rights to change that.
Well, you do have, you do have, as presented, I think that they they did a thorough job of going through the document. That's not to say that everybody here necessarily agrees with every last one of those proposed changes, but yes, you already have much of that work done.
If you have a question?
Yeah, well, I think Mr. Landon just said they could do some in January, well, they should do them all in January.
Well,
I mean, it doesn't make any sense if they can do one, they can do them all. That's the way it should be. It's been voted on. How many times do we have to discuss this? It's been voted on by the public. We should not be tampering with it.
well, if I can respond to that. I was charged with the task of trying to boil down the idea of could it be done, not should it be done.
Right.
And that's what I'm explaining to you. I would have to say, although it's certainly not my decision, that it would be even more cumbersome than it already is to attempt to make some of these changes in 2013 and then lateral off the rest of them to have to be made by an entirely different process in 2014. So from that perspective, since you can't do all of them in 2013, I would agree with you. You probably should not do half a loaf when you can't do the whole loaf.
So the recommendation would be just to pass, I would say just to pass it, pass that whole
Hand it-
document.
Yep.
If I might-
Hand it to them.
Hand it to the new board.
If I might add something to it, my suggestion, and I've talked to Doug a couple of times about this, my suggestion is that when a new legislature is elected in November,
Right.
that they meet shortly, obviously they can't pass any legislation, I mean, they should meet shortly thereafter. If several of the supervisors want to meet with them, the county executive,
They should.
whoever, I think that would be a good starting point right there, because some of the things come to my mind that there might need clarification, and I guess the way we're talking now, maybe they would do it, but first of all, there's a little confusion as to whether the clerk of the board is appointed for a 3-year term or the president of the board, that's one thing. But it's, and also I got a letter here from the Montgomery County Sanitary Sewer District of suggestions of people, because there's certain groups that have to have appointments made, right after, soon. And their suggestion is that the 3 new legislators from the district up there will replace the 3 supervisors and the 3 mayors plus a person at large. It's just things like that. I think these things, if you want to go that direction, we would have to, make these suggestions to this new legislature before they take office, so they got a little time to mull it over. But that's when, the way we're talking now, I think you're going to leave that to be their decision. I'm not too much of a guy to kick the can down the road, but I can see that I'll be the only one here that's probably doesn't want to kick the can down the road. But anyway, but as Doug has pointed out here, I think there's reasons why we can't kick the can down the road. Quite a few instances there. And also the county attorney, the appointment there that you had to decide whether he's working for the county. As the language in there now says he's got to work for the county, and the language in there is a little bit murky right now. Am I right, Doug?
It is murky, and also there are provisions in there, for example, there's with the provision with regard to terminating the county attorney that's in there. They suggested changing that. That's one that would be a diminishing of authority, and that's a good example of one that you would not be able to make this year. You would only be able to make it through the formal process by which the document was adopted in the first place. Again, I'm not saying that you can't, that it's because it's 2013 you can't do it. It's because there isn't enough time to do it.
And were you speaking of, when you spoke of referendum, you're speaking of permissive referendum, am I correct? Not mandatory?
Right.
It's all permissive. Okay, Ron.
Chair, in all respect, everybody was in such a hurry to change all this government that we rushed everything out there, and this is what we got. We have a bad document out there, and it's out there. We can't deal with it anymore. It's been done, the public has voted it, they wanted it, they've got it. Now, we have to just sit back, if you wish to bring in a new legislator, whoever it is, the new legislative group, and we'd like to discuss it all well and good. They have their own minds, let them decide what they want to do. Just hand that document the way it is and give it to them.
But I think
Let's just move on.
I think, Ron, we at least owe it to the new legislature to at least discuss this stuff that we feel is there. I mean, we're not going to make the decision. They're going to make the decision, but I think we have to at least make them aware of it. Am I correct, Doug? Would that seem the proper thing to do?
Making them aware of it, sure, and as you suggest, once the legislators are elected, even though they don't serve, if they want to get together and have a little jump on this by doing it in the last couple of months of the year, nothing to stop them from doing it informally, just to kind of get the ball rolling.
And as far as the treasurer, I know there's a lot of places in there where the treasurer has to be taken out, and the county executive put in that stuff. I spoke to Sean the other day, we talked about it a while, and Sean says he has no problem with whoever's elected county executive. He's more than happy, to work with him. He'll do the best job he possibly can. Am I correct, Sean? And we had that conversation, and I think Sean, he works for the county. He's done an excellent job all these years he's been here, and I think his first interest is the county, and I know that'll happen.
That's another example of, by making a change to the document as it exists, even though as the NISAC folks pointed out, it may not have really been the intent necessarily, but to make a change in it now, you're going to end up diminishing the authority in the document for one or the other, whether it's the treasurer or the executive, and so that falls right back to the idea of not being able to do it and treating it as just a clerical error or that sort of thing, and making it necessary to go through this formal process that we're discussing.
You're right there, because some of the areas in there diminished the treasurer, some diminished the executive.
Right, correct.
Who was first here? Garth?
Okay, thank you. I completely agree with you. One, after the elections, we'll know who the people are that are in the position. So that way, having the information ahead of time is the only way that you can do the job properly. So there can be a meeting of the minds. Hopefully, Steve Aquaria and Patrick Cummings were wonderful. They put a large amount of time, so that way at the organizational meeting, they can be well prepared to do the job efficiently. So I completely support it. Thank you so much.
John?
I agree. I should say I don't disagree with what Michael and Ronnie have said about not changing it or having us change it, but to be proactive, just to take it a step further and not just handing them the document. But I really think that having Doug or this committee that we're in now draw up or list those things that shouldn't, or that are what we think, in our opinion, are clerical, what we think, in our opinion, can be changed just by simply changing, or things that we think need to be listed that are the referendum. And give them that also, and not, you know what I mean? A comprehensive list of that.
If you can,
Yeah, go ahead.
if you indeed defer it, perhaps at least in part by necessity, to the county legislature in 2014, I'm not so sure that you need to separate the items at that point that have to go one way as opposed to the other way. I would envision it being done as one project encompassing.
I'm not the things that needed to be elected or voted at by the. Didn't you say that there were some things that might have to go to the public?
There's the potential, there's a provision for the possibility of a permissive referendum.
Right, those things.
Yes, but you can propose a comprehensive change and do it including the ones that don't need. There's nothing wrong with doing them all in that setting. You just can't do some of them the other way, the simpler way. So if in fact you're going to have the legislature deal with it, or allow the legislature to deal with it next year, if they were going to contemplate both categories of changes, if you will, they wouldn't really need to separate them out. They would conceivably do them all together. They might, how they packaged it as far as a proposed change, well, that would be up to them. But again, if the legislature enacted proposed changes, it could encompass both those that have to be afforded the referendum provision and those that don't. They could all go together at that point. I think that's when I started out here tonight, I was discussing the possibility that we could conceivably make some of the perhaps less significant changes here in the Board of Supervisors in 2013 through a quicker, more streamlined process, but it would leave many of these larger items unresolved. So if they did it next year, they could do it all at once, if they choose to. That would be up to them.
You okay with that, Tom?
Yep.
So I feel like we're spending way too much time beating a dead horse here. If nobody's willing to make the minor changes, then we need to defer to January. We have a fully functional document. There's nothing in there of those changes that will keep the government from running. They did a good job. We have a good document. The public voted on it overwhelmingly. If we have some type of graphical, some things we need to clean up, the new board can do it. And I think we should stop spending inordinate time on this and get to real business that the county has now. Thank you.
I guess that's the question, is that pretty much the opinion of the committee? I guess do you want to make these, do you want to meet with the county legislature when they're after they've been elected and just talk with them?
Absolutely.
Their
Yes.
meeting here, and, just kind of give them an idea. I think we almost owe that to them.
Yep.
Because they're going to have probably, it's going to be anywhere, 2 to 4 members that are here now that they have an idea what's going on. Obviously they know where to go. But you're going to have several new members, and I think we owe that to them to at least just kind of go over this a little bit. Say here's the red line charter. Here's what's been suggested. Here's what you're doing. Your job's going to be.
I just want to mention, if I may, to Supervisor Stark, you're right, some of the changes proposed are typographical changes. Some of them are identified as considerably more significant than that they are, if you take the NISAC recommendation, which you don't necessarily have to take, but they have the potential to significantly impact the functioning of the government, and it's those that it is not so simple to change, whether you choose to now or not. But I just don't want to leave this with the impression that these are just minor typographical changes. While some are, many are considerably more significant than that.
If you take their recommendation,
Right.
you have that opinion.
Right.
My opinion is it's still a functional document, and it's not going to stop the county government from operating come January, until the new board decided to make those changes, however they're going to do it.
Well, there's no choice, but it will have to function. I would expect there to be some potentially, the potential for some slightly rocky terrain in operating under the charter, at least until some of these issues are addressed and resolved. But again, that's not something that we can do sitting here, in most cases.
Okay, any more discussion? Yes, Brian?
Well, I kind of agree with meeting with the new board that's coming in, and we should really prioritize some of those things, like you mentioned, the appointments of some of the boards that need to take place first thing in January, because you may have a board that's set up that will change halfway through the month or in the previous month if that legislative board doesn't make a decision in January. With the sewer board, an organizational meeting in January, if they don't know who the members are, or if the members change from the way that it is now with the town supervisors, if they have their organizational meeting in January with that saying, okay, the members are the way that it's made up now, and then in the middle of January, the legislative board says, well, guess what, we're going to change that. Now it's the 3 county legislators. So I think those types of things we need to really point out to them so that they can act on that.
I think
One of the first, maybe in their organizational meeting in January saying, okay, we need, these things really need to take place before all the minutia of things, you know.
And I think you're exactly right. What I'd like to suggest doing is, we'll get a list together and I'll run it by Doug. And, you know, just things, like I said, we're not gonna get into these stuff that, you know, we're gonna make changes that require possible permissive referendum. But I just, like I said, I've got a list here of like 6 or 8 different items, you know, that I think that we should pass on to the board. I'll get them typed up, we'll get a copy to Doug, let you go through them, and see if you think it's something that we should, you know, talk to the legislature about. And, you know, get your opinion onto it, and at the next government education meeting in October, we'll just, as Brian is saying, we'll just decide what we, you know, want to pass on to the legislature. I mean, it's not guaranteeing whether they're going to do it or not going to do it, but it's just, you know, maybe suggestions on our part.
Right.
I think we owe that much to them. Yes, Barb.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with Supervisor Sweet that just out of respect to Steve Aquaria and Patrick Cummings, the time that they and their staff put in over 60 hours just to show them and educate them, I 100% agree with letting the new legislator start off on the best foot possible. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure why you wouldn't take the recommendation of NISAC. They have no agenda.
Right.
They're totally
They're just
not-
pointing out,
Non-political,
Oh.
non-biased, whatever, yeah.
absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll do it that way then. Any other, okay, we got one resolution on the agenda tonight, authorizing the chairman to sign related to transportation of election results. I sponsored that, Barbara has seconded. Discussion, Michael.
Few comments. Number one, what is the purpose of it? The second thing is, I would never sign an agreement with organizations. What's wrong with sheriff's deputies? This is too sacred to allow to go to some organization.
I will defer to Mr. Smith in the back here. He can explain a little better.
The reason for it is because the direction by council that we should have a service agreement with a group, you know, that we no shoes. And secondly, we tried the sheriff's department, and they are unable to provide us with the personnel that we need to do that. These election results are in secure, sealed containers that if there's anything tampered with them, they will not, you know, we will know about it.
What happens
We
if,
also have a backup as well with all that. So it's
do
not-
they put up a bond? What happens if something happens? We hope nothing ever happens, but what does happen? What if somebody lost it? What happens?
Lost it. It's sheriff's department could have lost it.
Well, but it's the sheriff's department, there's a big difference. And if the sheriff told you specifically that he cannot do this?
We tried him back in 2010.
No, did you talk to him recently as he said he can't do it?
We did it in 2010 and 2011, and what we kept asking for was more
The
personnel.
question is, did you talk to him recently?
No.
Okay, thank you.
May I just
Sure, go ahead.
Terry, I just want to clarify something that you said. I am not suggesting or that you engage the services of these organizations.
The service
The
agreement,
Board of
yeah.
Elections came to me and said that they had a proposal by which they would like to engage the services of certain organizations. What would they need in order to do that? And because well, in the past, there have been individuals who have done it, correct? Individual people, not county employees, but individual people who have been retained to do this. The Board of Elections pointed out to me that in at least another county, they had public service organizations of one type or another, social organizations, what have you, that wanted to raise money, and the members would do this transportation free as far as their own personal charges were concerned, and then the money that would go to the organizations. You still have it doesn't really change the practice that non-county employees, non-sheriff department folks would be doing the transportation. What I was asked to do was to look at how we would in fact do that if the Board of Elections and the Board of Supervisors were so inclined to engage the services of some outside groups to have them do that. And of course, the answer is, we'd enter into agreements with them, and I did suggest that if we're going to pursue this, that the Board of Elections put a resolution to this committee to see if the Board of Supervisors wanted to go along with it, and it doesn't name the organizations because really I don't think they're all even identified yet. It would be a generic type of agreement that could be done within the parameters of the Board of Elections as an election is approaching. But it would, the Board of Supervisors would authorize that to happen, and there'd be something that would authorize the board, the chairman of the Board of Supervisors to enter into the agreement, as we do with all other agreements, because I envisioned, and any of you who've been chairman, I think would agree, that if we simply did this and gave what is tantamount to contracts to the chairman of the board to sign a couple of weeks before an election, the chairman is going to say, well, where's the resolution that authorizes this? Where's the authority? And absent this, there wouldn't be any. So that's really, I just want to clarify what my role in this has been. I'm not an advocate for this particular type of thing, nor am I against it. I just did what I was asked to do.
Barbara?
I have two questions. One, I know there's safeguards for all of the results that are done. Not only are there inspectors there, but a lot of times the candidates are right there to verify the results. But will you have a list of the civic and non-for-profit organizations, possibly?
Well, that would be like I say, the service agreement would clarify that as to what it is that they're specifically doing, as well as who that group is.
Okay. All right.
Any more? John?
Terrence, can you refresh us on the operation of the voting machines themselves? I know that there is information removed from them and sent down to the Board of Elections at the close of the polls on election night. But do those machines retain that information as well? In other words, if it creates a document or an electronic document that you access at the Board of Elections, but the machine itself, does that also maintain that information once it's been removed?
I'll probably give you too much detail. In programming each one of the voting machines, we insert two memory cards. And they are programmed for that specific machine for the ballots that will be inserted into that. So there has to be two before we'll accept or we'll be able to program it. And all your programming really is the handicap side of it, as well as the scanner that's going to read the ballots that are inserted. When the polls are closed, when they shut the machine down, they remove one of those memory cards. That is what is brought back to us on election night, and then we take the information and put it into our software, and then eventually goes onto the website with the results. Those are the unofficial results that you all probably saw on election night here in September last week. The other one stays in the machine. The machine is brought back to us the next day, and eventually after something's been impounded and we're all satisfied with the bid, that other memory card is also then removed. And it has images. The scanner actually takes a picture of both sides of the ballot as well as how it read the ballot, so there's a report on how that does. And so we have all that information. So, and plus the fact that they print out two of the tapes, the results tapes get filed. So one of those then also comes back with that other memory card. So if there's something wrong with the memory card, we have a paper document that we can then manually enter in the results.
So that, the reason why I asked that is because you're talking about couriers here, and you may not have the ability as the county to vet who those couriers may be because we're contracting with these outside organizations. I wanted to make sure that there is redundancy, that information can be accessed in the event let's say that somebody does lose a bag or a memory card, whatever the case may be, we do have the ability to get that information if that does happen.
That's correct. And each one of the couriers also has to sign a document with the inspectors when they pick up the bags, and then when it is, and where along the way, if they have to hand it to somebody else, they sign, where eventually the commissioners or the deputies would sign off on it when it is brought in to make sure that nothing has changed in the process.
Yes, you have a chain of custody. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Ron?
Terry, I ask another thing. We sent out the yellow cards and people have got them all throughout the county, which were good. I told them their electric districts, what district they were in, what ward they were in, what township they were in, where to go and what polling places. I just went through a primary and people apparently didn't keep their yellow cards. It's going to be convoluted, very convoluted during this election because of the new election districts, the legislative districts that are set up. Are we going to follow up again with something in the newspaper or on TV or something, telling people, if you don't have your yellow card, please call the Board of Elections. We will tell you where to go. I know it's happened in several towns that they were calling, a couple of poll workers that work in the towns were saying that people came to one and didn't know where to go, and we didn't know where to go. I know some people are so used to it for so many years of going to the same place, and it's not happening now. Is there some way, I'm just asking, is there some way we can notify them again? And it doesn't have to be by mail. If there's a problem that you will be there to answer your question.
There are a couple things we could try to do. One, we have Facebook out there now. We could try to put some kind of document on Facebook for those that access that. There are our friends, I guess, whatever it is. We have it on our website that you can, if you don't know where to go, you can sign in, which takes you to the state website, which will tell you what poll sites you need to go to. We buy a legal, means by election law, we post things in the paper, but it doesn't, we kind of met those obligations in the paper. I would just hope that, because of the problems, that the papers would be willing to maybe step up and realize that we could use some public service announcements out there.
I'm sure if you put it out there, just like everybody does letters to the editor, if you did it in that form, you send a letter to the editor. I'm sure, conscious as the recorder is, don't put it out there, but I'm saying you have to put the numbers up and tell them between what times, if they have a question where they go to vote, give them a time. I'm not saying all day long, but give them a time, train them. Call will be available to answer your question. Please have pencil and paper on your side so that when we tell you what polling place you have to go to, you write it down and keep it, at least for a couple of elections, because until they get, it's going to be turmoil. I can foresee it now. I see they did just a little primary. Thanks, Terry.
Anyone else? What's the wish of the committee? Move it?
Yep.
Michael doesn't want to move it? Everybody?
Jeff doesn't.
Jeff is a no?
I do.
Barbara does? You don't? I didn't hear you. You're not on, you're on the committee. What's your? I'll move it on. Dominic's not here. Jeff's a no. Brian?
Move to the full board.
Okay. Barbara?
Yes.
All right. Michael's a no. We got 1, 2, 3. Haven't got 4.
No. 3 to 1. 3 to 1.
We got two. We got 2 no's. And we got Dominic.
You're absent. You're absent.
So-
Dominic and
Barbara, Brian, and myself are yeses. Dominic is a no because he's not here, and the other two, so.
Herbie's a no.
Pardon?
Herbie's a no, right?
Yeah, that's right, Herbie, that's the man I'm missing here. Herbie's a no, so.
We interpret and that's.
I'd like to fill in, Chair.
Do we need
What?
Can the chairman of the board, aren't you ex aficionado?
can overrule the world.
Yes. Because how would we get the results back if we don't have
We'll
this?
go back to Plan A. Well, yeah, that's a question though.
who does bring them back if this obviously is not gonna go through?
The inspectors,
Oh, brilliant. And it has to be both a Republican and a Democrat, right?
because they're inspectors.
And probably Friday or Saturday, you'll get your results.
It'll cost you a little more money.
Of course.
Tom?
Maybe
Good
I
government.
well, can we discuss it because it's no longer,
Yeah, I think,
Those who defeated it have to bring it back
yeah,
up.
we voted it kind of beyond discussion, but
well, I was just gonna say that, I mean, is it, the cost, we're gonna still pay under contract, or there was no cost?
There was a cost. What we were trying to do was the manpower. When we tried to use the sheriff's department the first two elections, the results were coming back really late. We had one deputy who forgot one of the poll sites and had to go back out. So of course, it had to be someplace like Ames.
I don't need to get all that. What I was gonna suggest was not the on-duty sheriff's department, but
These were guys who were called in. They were
Off.
these two guys who were off duty, and all he could afford me was five.
no, I know what I'm saying is we pay them, local policing agencies, St. Johnsville, Fort Plain, Canada, Herring, along with sheriff's department personnel that are not working. These are people who are not volunteering, but signing up for it. Nothing to do with Mike Amato and the sheriff's department, because they're off duty now. They're just individuals who are obviously able to care for us when they're on duty. They can care for our ballots, and we hire them to do that.
Well, see, that was the problem, is most of the time we were trying to find people, hire individuals to do that. And we just could not get enough people. We can't get enough inspectors to do the job. So this other county had an idea, it worked. We said, let's give it a shot.
How about the highway department employees? Mine would come in on overtime.
I think
I mean, mine would come in and take down Minden's.
running in,
Probably come in for
as it
straight.
stands right now, we're handing it back to Terry, so
All right.
I
Just
guess
trying to
you go from there, Terry, that's all I can say. I
You
hope
guys
so.
come in.
I can't believe some of these resolutions, you think we were planning on carpet bombing in Los Angeles, the
Crazy.
simple little things. Anyway, motion to adjourn.
Yep.
You got something else?
No, I was just gonna second it. Motion to adjourn, I was gonna
Oh,
second it.
okay, you got it.
So you're gonna sponsor it? Let him sponsor it, I'll second it.
Can we skip over, even though Tommy's not here, can we skip over to,
Oh, you know, that's, yeah.